What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to celebrate Hogwarts Legacy officially turning 1 year old. And I want to talk about just the game, the lead up to the game, but looking back, right? It's insane that it's actually been a year. It's accomplished a lot in that year. I mean, we had it released. That's one big thing considering, the game was a rumor. The game was announced. The game got delayed, and there was just so much noise. And we're going to talk about some of that in this video. A lot of noise. The game comes out. And while, critically, in terms of review scores and stuff, it didn't light the world on fire. It did light the world on fire in one specific way: sales. This game dominated. And obviously, some people think snubbed from Game Awards and just awards in general based off the amount of, players it had and the amount of sales. But this is a special game. It's absolutely a special game. And it was a game that we were asking for so long. And so, again, let's look back at this thing. So I do want to do this in kind of at least two parts, kind of going on the fly, much like I always do. I want to talk about the game itself, of course, some of the highlights, some of the weaknesses, but I also want to talk about the noise because, I like controversy. I was a part of it, I suppose, and it's hard for me to let that go, especially when you had people that were trying to go after people, ruining people's lives. I think it's fair to remember how wrong they were, to laugh a little at the situation, and to, again, remember and say out loud how well Hogwarts Legacy did with all of that noise. So let's talk about the game itself first. Honestly, I think it's aged really good in my head. Now, I haven't played it since it came out, not like that day, but I would say I haven't played this game in maybe 49 or so weeks. It's been a while, and I wanted to do it. There's just so many games that are out right now that it was hard for me, and I just couldn't go back. I do want to replay this game, and it's definitely going to happen at some point in the next, say, like 2 or 3 years before Hogwarts Legacy 2. But in my head, I've definitely gone through ups and downs on this game, but it's overall an up, right? It's overall a net positive because this game did a lot of things that are very special, and the highlights of this game, I think, will always stand out. There's weaknesses, but the highlights, which, as we've said before, but we'll say again for this video, the castle, right? The castle is insane to even think about, and I did a live stream yesterday with Sway, and we talked about it, and sometimes I stop and think, how do they even do it? How do you even make a castle that is that detailed? And, how many meetings do you have to have? How many sketches? How many anything? What do you have to do to get the castle that detailed and to get all of the minute details so right? You know what I mean? And that really was the strength. Now, I actually think they did the outskirts, right? Once you leave the castle, pretty well, too. Now, nothing can really replicate the castle, and, when you say Hogwarts Legacy, Hogwarts is the school. It's half of the name of the game. It is the most important. So there was talk when the game came out of when you leave Hogwarts, does it lose a little bit of its magic? Yes, and it does. I don't think it holds up as well on the outside as it does in Hogwarts, but to be fair, that is half, if not more than half. In fact, most at the beginning of the game, right, the very first several missions and several hours, you are in Hogwarts Castle. You're really getting to learn the students, the classes, just, why you're there, all of that jazz. So you're immersed in the castle to begin with, pretty much, and you're there for a long time. So it is fair that should be the strongest part, of, I guess, the environments and what you're looking at. It was just an incredible achievement, I should probably say, and, I would applaud anybody there that had anything to do on the castle. Okay, so that's a big one. We've talked so much about Sebastian. I think Sebastian is a phenomenal character, and, looking back even, I do like the story. I think we said this even when the game came out. The villains, they just didn't use them right. I just don't think they're in the game enough. I think Rookwood had something kind of special to him. He always had something in those trailers. Remember we would talk about him leading into the game. There was something there. There's a little spunk, to his personality, but he's just not in the game enough. And even Ranrock, they're not there. And I think they're cool when they are there, and there's a couple good scenes, but there's really only a couple scenes in general that they exist in the game. So it's hard to call the villains good when they're in 6 or 7 scenes throughout the entirety of the game. That was a weakness, but again, does it get balanced out? I would say probably overall, yeah. Because I think a Professor Fig is a really great character. I think you as the student, I think is a really solid character and just choice. Obviously the Poppy memes and stuff, but I really think the friend group was also pretty darn strong. Quest-wise and how they push things, none of them really did that except for Sebastian, but I think they had a pretty solid friend group. And a thing I do have to keep reminding myself, and I think this is more and more fair as time goes on. I think it's more and more fair when you think back at this game. First time. And, you can use it. You could say, well, Alex, you're using it as an excuse. I'm aware, it's odd because I am aware, but I do think you have to kind of have that mentality. I get we judge games like you buy a game, you spent your money, your hard-earned money. Truly, like, it's your money. You could buy anything. You buy this piece of entertainment, right? You want what you want, whatever your expectations are. But there is more, like, it's more intricate than that. You know what I mean? This game came from a team that has never done anything like this before. It was their first try. And it is important, I think, especially me, like, when I keep looking back, I have a whole third channel where I have looked back at games for the last year, right? Games from 10 years ago, games from 2 years ago, games from 20 years ago. Everything's a little bit different, and you're in a different kind of phase in the gaming industry, and you kind of judge it accordingly. The studio's in a different place, you kind of judge it accordingly, and we're kind of all caught up in something, when a game comes out, and especially a big game like Hogwarts. I do think some people forget that. Not everybody, but I think some people forget, like, this was the studio's first try. So any of the gripes I have, I'm not saying they're all excusable because this was their first effort, right? Like, there are things you have to work on. There's things you have to improve, but can you say that? Can you say, well, could you say that there was this issue because the team had never done anything like it before? I think that's a pretty valid, it doesn't excuse everything, but I think it can excuse, things here and there. So, I think overall, again, net positive in terms of story, characters. We talked about the castle. Want to, of course, throw in combat, my second favorite thing, to talk about with this game. The combat, if there's anything beyond the castle that I think they nailed, was the combat. Really impressed. And, I'll go on record, and I don't even have to really go on record because I have video evidence of the last, 6 years. The combat never looked all that amazing. Now, there was potential there, but whenever you saw the combat, there was talk of, oh, it's so stiff. And I remember defending it, but also being, cautious, right? Where it's like, yeah, it doesn't scream amazing, but maybe it's supposed to be like that. Maybe it'll feel better, when you actually play the game. And this is definitely an example of a game that just watching doesn't give you everything. Not a lot of games with combat or with, actual whatever it might be, you have to actually play it, right, to fully feel it. But this is a good example of one of those games, because if you watch the wand fights versus playing it, it is a totally different thing. I don't think it looks as good. I don't think on that department, I could see why you might have some issues, but once you pick it up and play it, at least in my opinion, right, I think it works. I think these stiff, almost like dancing-like routines of these characters, I think it works really well. I think blocking and parrying and just the mixing and matching of spells, I think really, really works. I think you can kind of get creative and you can kind of have your own portfolio. Now, there's a good amount of spells. Of course, people wanted more, and then there's always room to add spells. But I think what we had was really good and a foundation. The castle was a foundation and something you can absolutely build on without really having to change that much, right? Because it's a castle. There's lore-wise, you shouldn't really change all that much about it. Combat-wise, the foundation, the free flow, Arkham-like combat, but with distance and wands, that's your foundation. You really don't have to. You can make it a little bit more fluid, right? And you can add spells and maybe ways of countering and different ability usages and all that jazz. You can do that, but the core foundation of how you, fight, you really don't have to, tinker with all that much. So, again, does the game have flaws? It does, and we didn't even talk about the vast amount of side content that definitely has not aged well in my mind. The Merlin trials, the collectible, pages, fun, the pages specifically, fun to get, but eventually when you have to get hundreds upon hundreds, it does get old. They definitely added things to this game to make it longer than it really needed to be. Honestly, you could have trimmed some of the fat. It would have been shorter, and maybe they're afraid that people didn't want that, which, to be fair, people wanted an open world Harry Potter, like game where you make your own student, you go to classes, you have friendships, you have an original story. They captured a lot of what people asked for. But, with those parameters, big, open world, right? So if you don't have a lot of those Merlin trial-like things, and a couple of them is fine. I'm not saying get rid of all of them. A couple of them is fine, but to have as many as they did and the repetition that was there, right? It was too much. And those are learning things, right? Those are things that hopefully, and I hope, and I think they will, get rid of or tinker with, at least, let's say, for future games. So is it without its flaws? No. There's flaws in the story. There's flaws in the villains. There's flaws in some of the side characters. There's flaws in, again, some of the fat that would need to get cut. Quidditch not being in the game. But not that big of a deal. Honestly, as time has gone on, maybe it's because of Quidditch Champions coming. I don't look back at that with any, malice or anything. And, I just mentioned it, so really to end at least this part of the game itself, and we'll talk about, the noise around it, this was a game that so many people wanted for so long. And that's the driving force of this game. That's the driving, I guess, memory of this game is this is really generally what happens when you listen to fans. Honestly, yes, there's some things that you can't always replicate and, different situations. But this is something that people have been asking for forever. And we really, besides the Lego games, there's not been a lot of good, even the last ones, the Connect ones, some of the later movie tie-in ones, they're terrible. They're awful video games. They're terrible. It doesn't matter the IP. They're bad games. So people have been asking for this type of game for a very long time. And they've been, given really garbage. And then now you get a game that it's not the greatest game of all time. I don't even think it's the greatest game of last year. But it satisfies a lot of what people wanted. A lot. And it's a fantastic foundation. Again, remembering where this team came from and this being their first attempt. It is a great first step. And to try to live up to so many expectations and what fans of one of the biggest IPs on planet Earth, right? This is another thing to remember. This is one of the biggest IPs on the planet. People have been asking for this for 10, 15 years. You give it to them. It's a big game. And there's all eyes on it for good and bad reasons, and for it to be your first time. This could have gone, for those that don't think it's all that good, that's fine. I have respect for that. You don't have to think the same as me. But for those that don't think it's all that great, imagine if it was god-awful, right? Imagine if this game just didn't work at all. And I don't think you could really argue that. I would have a hard time being convinced that this is a bad game. There's average elements. I don't know if anything is really bad. There's puzzles in this game that are really good. I don't know what is bad or terrible about this game. So it could have been that. It could have been the worst case scenario, and it wasn't. So just kind of want to end at least this part of the video on that. Do you want to talk about the controversy? This always makes me happy. This always makes me excited. No, look, it succeeded. In the last year, and I do think, retrospective, looking back at this game, it's important to throw in the success of this game based off, everything that came before it. So game comes out. It immediately is a hit. It breaks records on Twitch and on Steam and all this jazz, and it becomes a very popular game to watch and to play. And it got beaten, as the months have gone on. Pal World kind of just walks all over it, as it walked on many games, right? And but ultimately, this game sold really well. Not even really well. It sold at an elite level. To be honest with you, not many games can do this. And again, I think that's the value of the IP. I said many, many times leading into this game, I knew it was going to do well. I knew it was going to be a massive deal. And I even said that I think it's going to be a situation where people that don't play games are going to play this game. You're going to borrow your cousin or your brother's PlayStation that you don't even play. You're going to borrow it just to play this game. And guess what? I truly believe that's what happened. Now, did people buy multiple copies to stick it to the trolls or the haters? Yes, I absolutely think people did that. But I think this brought in a community that doesn't really get, honestly, I don't even think that's a attack or anything. They don't play games. They probably don't even know how to play some games, and they got it anyway. And that is the power of, I guess, the game itself. Because if it didn't look all that great leading in, these people wouldn't have as much reason to do it. It's a testament to the IP, to Harry Potter, the Wizarding World, right? So the game sells so well. It's the #1 selling game of 2023. And not just that, we're a month into 2024, but already you can look at the reports of sales of games of January 2024. And the game is still up there. It's still in the top 3 or 4, I believe. So this is, I believe, going to be a game that throughout this entire, and going into year 2, right, when we reach next year, 2-year anniversary, this game is going to continue to sell, which really, the Spider-Man, Marvel Spider-Man, and this is kind of the tier Hogwarts Legacy is in, I would say, that kind of tier, Spider-Man, Hogwarts, a few others. And the tier right above it, by the way, truly is the Red Deads, the GTAs, some CODs. Now, this game beat the last COD and might beat the next couple CODs, right, too. But those games right above it are reserved for not necessarily like the elite, like Red Dead Redemption, I think are very much elite games. GTA, I guess so too. But like COD, like just because you sell a lot of copies doesn't mean your game is like the next level or pushes the boundaries. I really don't believe so, but it is a special thing. And not many games can do it. And not many games can keep the momentum. Now, obviously, it's not selling as well right now as it did, say, last February or March. But it's very hard to keep the momentum that Hogwarts has had. And I would argue, and I think I'd be very successful at arguing, very few, like maybe a couple dozen properties or franchises have ever done something like this. This is a rare example. And that is all with the attacks. So, honestly, we don't even have to get that much into it. And I haven't so far. These people are, obviously we're not friendly with each other, and they were never friendly to people like us. I just look at it as a major win, and maybe this is why so many people kept saying, well, just ignore it, and I mean, I can't. There's something in me that has to fight back. But no, is there a reason to do it? Well, the game kind of speaks for itself. And I agree with that. The game speaks for itself. The sales speak for themselves. All these people that put us on lists, if you streamed it on Twitch, you were put on a list, which sounds very like a different generation to me of what other people would do to other people. That is insane. It's actually insane what people did to others for getting this game. It's actually insane what others did leading into this game, calling you whatever if you were going to get this game. It's disgusting. It's alarming. But it feels very nice that they were proven wrong. I don't even know if that's like the right term. Well, they were definitely, anybody who said the game wouldn't sell, obviously they were proven wrong. But I guess more than anything, it proved that we don't care about them, like what they're trying to push. Now, again, is there some righteous things that people were kind of talking about here and there? Yeah, like there was like an okay discussion to be had here and there. But they, of course, make it about their entire lives. And then when, as I said so many times, leading into this game, when you step over the line to just accuse somebody that you are something for buying a game, it's where you lose me immediately. And it is good to see. Like, that is, again, something that I take away from this game where a lot of people put their foot down. That line is not a line you cross, and it's not a line that gets like forgiven so easily. When you tell somebody that if they buy a video game that they're playing by themselves, it wouldn't even matter if they were playing a multiplayer, but you're buying a game with your own money, you're playing it by yourself, you're enjoying it, you might not stream it, you might not make a video, you might just be one of the 15, 20 million people that bought this game that didn't do that. Those people, I guess you're all evil. You're all certain words because, all of this jazz, that we won't get into all of that jazz, right? But that is where you lost me, so easily. But I honestly believe you lost so many other people. You turned people against you that maybe were for you before. You made people buy multiple copies of this game that only would have bought one. In fact, literally by that logic, you made the game more successful. If you just didn't say anything, and you could have boycotted. If you don't want to buy the game, you don't have to. You don't have to go after people either, right? But you did. If you just kept your mouth shut and just didn't buy the game like you wanted to not buy the game, then actually I think the game would have been, not like massively, it would have been slightly, maybe it would have sold 500,000 less units. Now, would that have mattered? No, literally not at all. But it would have made it slightly less successful. That's what these people want in the first place, right? So I look at it as a major success. I look at it, again, like, yeah, I am harsh and I do go after these people. But these people, I mean, I have stories, and we've talked about some of these stories. They have not been very nice to me. I try to be respectful when I can, and some of these people went after me pretty hard and did some different stuff that, again, I'll keep to myself for now. But overall, I look at it not as like a massive hate. Ultimately, I don't really care about these people, and that's the point. This game proved so many people don't care. And I think that's an absolute win. I'm glad to see it because, again, that could have gone the other way too. This game could have not sold. People could have been afraid to support the game based off what people, I would have lost a lot of faith in humanity if that happened. And maybe these people feel like humanity has lost it, but I really don't think so, right? I would have been pretty sad if that happened. But no, people put their foot down and said, it's an entertainment product. I want to have fun. I want to enjoy it. It's my money. You can do what you want with your money, but it's my money, so I'm going to buy it. That's how it should be. And this could have gone, gone either way. And I'm glad it went this way. So overall, honestly, happy 1 year anniversary. From a personal standpoint, this game did a lot, from the channel. I covered it from the very beginning. I was, to my knowledge, in terms of individual creators, I think what Culture Gaming did a video before me. Okay, so in terms of entities, I wasn't the first one to talk about it, but single creators, I am the first one, and it is a game that's very special. I'm very happy that ultimately, did it live up to everything I wanted? No, it probably didn't. But this is a game that I had covered so long, and I had wanted it to be good. And, so many people, came into the channel because of it. And I'm thankful for all of that. Like, it helped. I don't think it made me. The channel can do well without, and that's the point. I don't want to rely on one single game. But it's very hard to say that the game didn't help, right? Like, the game absolutely helped, and I'm very thankful for the people I met, both creators. We had a lot of conversations, and you guys, the fans, the community, like fans of Hogwarts Legacy, right? Like, it's awesome what we managed to do, and we managed to do something really, really cool together. So I'm really thankful for this game. I'm happy because it's not like a piece of garbage that we have to like prop up because it like helped me in my business, right? Like, it's something that it's legitimately good. It's a good game that also, did well for me and provide a lot of fun, a lot of conversation. It's a special game. It'll always be one of the most special games of my life, even if it's not. I don't think I'd ever put this game in like my top 10, I always talk about maybe like a top 50 list one day I'll do of my favorite games of all time. This isn't in it. I mean, I'll be flat out honest. It's not in that list. But special games that are special for more than one reason. This game's on that list. Whatever list that might be, it's on it because this is a very special game. So happy 1 year. Maybe we'll do this again. I don't like to do it every year. Maybe we'll do it like 5 years, right? So take a few years off. And Hogwarts Legacy 2 would probably be out by then, so that would make it even more special. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.